Hello from Lake Macquarie in New South Wales, 8th round of the Costa BREAM series. This is the Daiwa event and my day 2 highlights. It was a much rougher day on day 2 than day 1, 20 to 25, gusts to 30 knots from the southwest, which made it a very interesting day and a day where you could move a lot in the placings. I started day 2 on the place where I finished day 1. That was on the flats at Swansea, with a little bit of current running into the lake and the wind blowing against it. Made it really rough, but the clear water meant the fish were in there and they were feeding. And it only took a few casts to hook this first fish on a little black jackal chubby. Considering how many fish were in there yesterday afternoon, I thought with this first fish straight away, it was dead set certainty I was going to get a limit in the first hour. Well, it didn't end up that easy. We fished those flats for nearly 2 hours and didn't get another legal fish. And on the way to our second spot, found a small boat drifting across the lake. In the strong wind, they were going for a swim if they didn't get back in, so we did the right thing, towed them in. On day 1, we'd found that the fish were in the roughest water we could find, and the clear water in Lake Macquarie means that ruffled surface plus the clear water means the fish bite pretty well. We headed south today because I think on day 1 that northerly would have stopped a lot of people going to this sort of spot, and the first fish down near Cam's Wharf was a real cracker. Now, one of the smartest things I did all weekend was put down the 2-pound line after the first bust off on a crab and switched up to 3-pound line. The new Daiwa crab rod and an old Gekeben reel that was a bit of a favourite, and just that extra 50% of line strength on these big fish, and this is a big fish, made all the difference.
A dinosaur! How big is this fish? Oh, it's bigger than the one yesterday. Look at the head of that thing. That's got to be close to 1.5 kilos, that fish. Worried about losing, but...
Now, an important thing when you're fishing crabs on moored boats, and especially in the wind, is that you have to lay your line down when you cast. And by that I mean you don't just throw a cast and let the line billow out in a big arc. You have to sort of stop the cast before it hits the structure or hit the boat, lay that line in the water, and that stops the wind from blowing the line away and lifting the crab up in these brim. They love the crab on a straight drop. The tactic of trying to fish places where other people hadn't fished the day before was really paying off, and the fourth fish came into the well at around 3 hours before I got my fourth fish on the first day. Short space of time, I've become a real fan of these, the longer, what I call crab rods from Daiwa. These rods are all between 7'8" and 8.5 feet long, and as you can see, they really cushion the fish when they're fighting on that light 2 and 3 pound line, and makes for very few hooks pulled from the fish. And in a tournament, that's really important.
Number 4. Maybe.
For me, there's a couple of types of bites you get when you're fishing crabs. The first is when the crab sinks all the way to the bottom and a single fish grabs onto the lure. The second one, like this one, is when you throw it in and a school of fish is there, one grabs it and runs away from it. In this case, the fish ran nearly all the way back to the boat before I caught up with it and was able to set the hook. It was number 5, and of course it was worth a celebration.
Dance to me that.
Now, here's the other sort of bite you get on the Cranka crabs. I've thrown into the boat, sunk it all the way to the bottom, and when it hits the bottom, I've taken up the slack and just slowly lift that crab up off the bottom. And you can see here, catching up with the slack, and now just that slow little lift up off the bottom. So swim it up, they don't pop like a prawn. Feeling for a bite, feel for a bite. There's the bite, and there's the fish on. The best thing about finding a school of fish on a boat is that you can often go back time and time again for fish. Now, sometimes that's straight away, and other times you have to come back to that boat during the day. Now, I found a fish on this boat in practice with a few of its mates there. I probably fished it 3 or 4 times during the tournament, but it wasn't until this, the last 30 minutes of the day, where I finally caught my first tournament fish on it. And very quickly, a second.
Still throw out of 25. Last minute upgrades on fish too. So there's another one about 30 centimetres. The thing about that track my fish up or the AV tank is really thick with that. Tell me what the scores is. That one's 30 and a half, 3 up. And I'm now going to look up what my smallest fish is in there now. So I can't remember.